All right, let's jump into it. Where is it? 9:52 on Friday, the 20th of March, and man, metals absolutely demolished. You can see these original sort of like little price targets I had, and I was like, look, they played their part, and a price target is just a measured move. It doesn't mean that you necessarily that's it, the be all end all of those sort of moves and that, but it does give you a level where you would do expect the market to react, and oof, did that happen to react to that? And look, pretty much exactly as you can see, this was the plan. The sort of moving down here. Sort of obviously well, not obviously, but it did actually sort of massively overshoot where I thought it would come to. So if you have a look at sort of that, yeah, I mean, the weekend analysis is really the one where we get the sort of overview of, the general direction and the price levels that we're sort of looking at. And if I could pull this up, I had to find that there, but it is, I think, got this one here. Um, this is what we were kind of looking at, sort of like come start of the week. So 14th of March, and I don't obviously the weekend review and that with it all, but underneath 50/70, 50/80, well, like sold into if we sort of could get a push up and then a push down, and that was the sort of level would have liked to have sort of sold to. But the idea was sort of like a break of the opening level will be the sort of target, well, the confirmation to be targeting 48.80, 47.80, and 46.80. Also, sort of as you can see, silver down to 70, price target down at 73. I think this went down to 65. Absolutely demolished though with the metals and that. So look, it did overshoot. Obviously, like I had some pretty decent, chunky looking sort of price targets there, and it overshot those completely. As you say, I think where we got down to 4,500, we got down to in the end. Like this is absolutely like we've only really ever sort of seen sell-offs like this in this kind of period here, where we had this absolute trolloping from the highs. Geez, you can see how big that is compared to that. Like this was a big move. I mean, it was like 10% or something in 24 hours. It's 5,000 when we broke this little sort of consolidation patch the other day. But all the signs were there. I mean, like as I said, like well, not as I said. Geez, I need to have another coffee. Sorry, talking to myself. But all the signs were there. Uh, from this sort of thing. And sort of like, obviously, so we covered it with the analysis. But the break of this sort of channel, the little fluff around here, moving down here, consolidating, this point here was where I was really starting to pick up on it because I was thinking, the dollar had such a weak start to the week. Um, and gold was just not reacting. And I thought, look, if the dollar pushes, this is going to get whacked. And the dollar hasn't even fully broken out. In fact, actually, the dollar got smacked into the close of yesterday as well. But anyway, the point is that metals got absolutely trolloped. Where to from now? Well, I'd be reluctant to sort of jump into shorts at this point here. I think sort of realistically, this has been such an incredible bounce, such an incredible sort of move to the downside here. We're oversold. This is on the 4 hour. I do believe in the sort of the idea that the structure will prevail, in the idea that we have a sort of move down, leg one. I do believe we're entering into this leg two here, and then I do think we will have this move down here at some stage. Now, as to sort of how high it comes and all these kind of things, well, that's what we've got to sort of work out and try and ascertain. But, we do see it sort of, on the open. It's had a fairly decent bounce actually, because it went to 45 up to what did it get to 46.77, so 170, 180 buck bounce already, which sounds incredible, and it is incredible. But when you take it in the context of it dropping 500 bucks in 24 hours, not so much so far. So it's certainly definitely in a sell mode at the moment. But I wouldn't be surprised if this sort of fluffs a little bit and then pushes a bit higher, and then maybe we could see some sells around these higher levels over here if we sort of go back. I mean, this was just a body fill here and it just chopped straight through there. Didn't really do anything. This bottom wick over here, you can see they're trying to sort of hold the underside of that at the moment. Excuse me. But interesting, like areas that I'd be interested in to potentially see this thing have another, well, have its third leg down would be back up at 47.60 and then possibly 48.55. Now that may sort of be a little bit of a sort of a long shot, but I just think that sort of like the size of the sell down Still warrants more of a move down here, but I wouldn't be surprised if this thing does sort of have a little bit of reprieve before we do get the sell down here. I just think, sort of like trying to short it now. Look, I did this yesterday. I shorted, I was short from here at 5,000, took my profits. I shorted yesterday through the day. I took my profits like here or something. I missed the bulk of this move down here, unfortunately. I jumped off too early and went to dinner. That's life, and that you got to pick your battles and that. But realistically, you should be here to trade. Anyway, point is that I think that this is very strong sell down here. We could see a repeat of yesterday's. Let's go into a lower time frame. You could see a repeat of yesterday's open, whereas we moved up, grinded up through Asia, and then took out the lows and then drove down. However, I think it's a little bit late to the party to be shorting right now. Honestly, I think that sort of like this is going to sort of like look like it wants. I mean, look, it's rejecting three times here from a known level. So it looks like it wants to go down here, but I wouldn't be surprised if it then sort of then goes whoop and then sort of grinds up here a little bit higher. I don't know. I'm just a little bit cautious on shorting it too early here. If this sells down and takes out the lows, well, you're potentially going down. I mean, next main levels, once over this thing starts to load, I wouldn't be surprised if we got another couple of $100 in it, should we take out the lows here. However, I'm just a little bit cautious. I think that sort of like, this has been an incredible move. We had the move for the first day. We had an even bigger move yesterday. I just think that sort of like shorting it now is just the risk is a bit too high. I think we're too far into this move down here to really give a great sort of like to feel happy about that kind of sort of like, it's going to go further. I think it sucks too many people in that are like, oh, metals are selling off. And it's going to go. It's funny, I ran into a mate's father yesterday and had a bit of a chat about a few bits and pieces. And he was saying, oh, well, if you would go out into the market now, what are we doing? And I was like, look, I mean, I'm short metals. Like, that's it. That's what I'm doing. And of course, then we had this incredible sort of sell-off, continued sell-off through yesterday. So, yeah, it looked like a genius there. Hey? Anyway, whatever. Point is that I think that, oops, so alerts going off. I would be looking for a little bit more upside here. 47.70, if it can continue, 48.50. This is an area in which I'd like to sort of really look for another big wave down. It looks a bit sort of thin, but again, it's all in context of this move. And if we sort of drag this, and sort of say this is the start of the move. I mean, with these fibs and that, you can really you can break things up. You could say in this last little leg, so the leg through yesterday, or you could say actually realistically from all the way up on the top over here. Like people will say, okay, you got to do this, you got to do that, and that's fine. You can definitely do these things, but for me, it's sort of like this is kind of like its own period. This is a consolidation, and then this is the sell down. So that's why I'm using this as the top or anchor point of my fib here. And if we sort of have a look at it, back up around that sort of 48.20, around this area where we had that sort of previous supports, even if you want to put that a little bit lower just through here, it's coming very close to the 61%. Undo this big massive move down here for anybody that didn't take their profits and then have that leg down. So that's ideally that's where I'd like to sort of get up to have another sort of shot at sort of shorting this thing down. I just think it's a little bit far into the move as of right now to sort of say that we're gonna just sort of go straight back down to the bottom. Look, again, anything's possible with this sort of stuff. It's even possible that this thing was just the greatest buy the dip moment ever and we get a big V-shaped recovery. Anything's possible. But if the normal sort of market structure prevails, we should be looking for a move with a little bit more of a bounce, in my opinion. And then we look for this third leg. And this third leg is going to be the one that defines us. Because that's either going to give us a higher low, and we can see, okay, wow, this was a buy the dip moment, and we're going a bit higher. Or at least going back to sort of target the bounce highs, put the emphasis back on bounce highs. Or it's back down to the bottom, or it's back down even lower for a continuation, even lower down there. So I do think that this structure is like the best way. Well, this is the way that I'll be approaching it. So a little bit more upside in that before we're looking for some sort of potential sells to then sort of be targeting the lower levels. All right, moving on. And we got silver. Silver was absolutely demolished. So this was my $5 move alert from here. So under this line, so 70 basically, and where did it go to? 65. So we got 450. This move here, I've been sort of, had the alert set for quite a while actually, because I thought possibly, where was it? Back over here, maybe we're going to have it. So I think that's where I initially sort of put it, sort of thinking, oh, yeah, it breaks down here, $5 move down here, or whatever. But yeah, pretty much worked to a T. Underneath that zone, 450. Come on, that's close enough. Bounce here has been quite strong as well, and these kind of moves. I mean, you can see how much this thing sort of like just was not bouncing yesterday. So this is yesterday's move, and this is a great indicator of how the fib works. Because again, you're not looking like for me anyway. I was looking at here's a separate part of the move. Here's the move coming down from this high here, where it did a little fake up, engulfing, sold down. So this is where the low was yesterday morning. Look at where the bounce came to. So if you take this as the high, that's the bounce. The bounce came 23% on the fib and then took out the lows. It's important to know how the fib works in that, because that indicator in itself is telling you that they are getting out no matter what. You know what I mean? Like if the bounce can't even come past 23%, the demand to sell that thing is just incredible. People are like, look, you know what? I'm not even going to wait. Maybe I got in here, maybe I tried to buy the dip, whatever. Yeah, I'm getting out, get out, get out, get out. And you can see the resulting action afterwards. This is why people were not, no, there was a very lack of buying up around this point here, and it just got absolutely demolished. I mean, silver is, I heard a good sort of analogy with silver the other day, that it's just like gold on roids. And it really is, because I think it was like 12% or something intraday yesterday. It was just insane. Look, this is very V-shaped recovery at the moment here. We've got the same similar sort of thing with gold. They've tried to push it up on open, push back down, boom, boom. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes a little bit higher. If you update this fib now, we can see how strong is the move at this point here now. So still with our anchor point, we've got our lows. We're back up to the 50% here. I wouldn't be surprised if we can get back up. I mean, look, 76 seems a decent little level. It was very smooth move from 75 down to 72 here. And as I said, look, my targets were 73, 72.50 slash 73. So my targets were around here. And obviously, bang, left a bunch on the table there. Sort of another sort of $3, another $8 or something like this. So, this move has just been incredible. But the thing is, it's sort of like, how many people are switching on and go, oh my God, did you see metals? They're selling off. They're selling off. Quick, let's short them. Well, what does that happen? It just feeds the moves up here, because the people go, so I shorted here, and textbook says I put my stop here. Oh, what? I'm out. I thought metals were selling off. No, metals are selling off, and that for the people that are sort of being positioned for this stuff all the way up here. Go back and watch the videos where I said, look, this is the 61%. This is where we were looking for the move to here, come down here. Of course, I'm not a trader that holds here and gets out here. You know what I mean? I'd like to be, maybe, but my better returns are just being in and out like a bandit, mate. Like, you know what I mean? I'll have my sort of price levels, my targets. I'll have my structure, but I'll go in and out a bunch of times through the move. I always sort of think, I mean, particularly this gold move, that was a 35K trade, that gold move. In 24 hours, had just sort of sat on my hands and done nothing. So left a bit on the table with that one. Anyway, whatever, that's beside the point. What we're doing here now is looking, okay, is this move going to shoot back down here? Is it going to come back up? Again, I just sort of think it's a bit far into the move to sort of expect a complete sort of push back down here. I could be wrong, of course. This thing could sort of come back down here. Certainly underneath 69 and be looking in trouble. I do think, we are kind of be coming to $50 at some stage. It's funny. Where were we? I think we are about over here. And I was talking to my father, and I was like, maybe it's here, I don't know. Anyway, somewhere over here. And I was saying, hey, look, what? I think it's going to go to 50 before it goes to 120. And then, of course, we had this big push up here, and it's like, oh, well, here we go. But no, it was a trap, and now we're sort of coming back down over here. So, look, I do think downside is going to prevail. I do think this is where we're going to move because I think, look, these were the all-time high breakouts from like 50 years and all this kind of sort of stuff. And you got this breakout point here. I just feel there's too many people that would be like, hey, look, you know what? I'm going to stay long as it's above that. And I'm talking about big people. I'm not talking about Joe Blow and Joe Sixpack and that. And the sort of people that sort of like, oh, if it gets back down below, and this is maybe more retail, but if it gets back below the all-time highs, then, on the grand scheme of things, this is all a big fake out and it's going to come back down here. I think there's too much that needs to be taken out here. So I do think this is the destiny sort of for silver before we see any sort of major gains in that. But of course, that's a bigger sort of theme of the trade. It's nothing that's actionable today. Like I think I said yesterday, like a mate sort of sent me a screenshot of this dude who was sort of saying with Aussie, he's like, oh yeah, guns blazing, it's going to 82 cents, and then it's going to 36 cents, and then it's going to 92, like some sort of ridiculous. So they're not actionable price levels. I could say silver's going to $50. So what do? Short it. Short it no matter what. Well, what happens when you short it here and then it runs up $20? Because this is the thing I said, like, at this point here, I'm like, well, it's going to 50 before it goes to 120. But keep in mind, it can do $10 swings or $20 swings at the time. And that's what it did. So, you know what I mean? You can't just sort of go, oh, yeah, it's going down here. Unless you've got a tiny position and you're not making money day to day. Put it that way, because this thing is wild. This thing moved, as I said, it dropped like sort of, 11, 15% or something yesterday. Like it was a big move at its extreme, and it's bounced back up. Anyway, point is, I do think, same with gold, that we have a little bit more upside before we do potentially have this sharp sort of, this is a V shape here, very much in that. So I'd be cautious on actually even sort of getting down to these lows. Structurally, this doesn't look like the kind of thing that's going to go V shape and then V shape back down like this. I think this is more potential for some more upside, some more downside, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's a move that we tend to start to form now. As to how high it goes, who knows? But I would be cautious, even sort of if we get up around this level here, around that 61%, similar as I was saying with gold, up around 76. I do think we could get some pushback here, but I would be reluctant to be holding that sort of silver short or and expecting a continuation down here at this point. Potentially something more like this, and then something like that. So I think sort of like this move's kind of played out. I think there's going to be some jumpy back and forth, but I could see this thing go back to $80 before it takes out 64. Put it that way, and where we at 72 here. Again, look, maybe today happens and it comes down here and goes sub 60. If it does, well, these are realistically your targets down here. But I think for now, it feels a little bit sort of into it, too far into the move. And I think too many people have been going, oh, here, look at this early open and it's rejecting down. Here we go, more sells, more sells. I think that just opens it up to sort of squeeze things a little bit higher here. So certainly taking out 74.25, looking up around that 76. 76, 76.20 area. See what happens at that 61% retracement of this big sort of this leg down here. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if then maybe 72, 73 becomes the support, and then we sort of see this thing bounce a little bit higher, and we have a bit more of a structure move. Excuse me, to the top side here. This is just a bit sharp for me to sort of think that it's just going up, down, and then sort of go and then drop that back down there. All right, and let's kick on to the dollar, because this thing, wow, got absolutely slammed. So what time did this started off from 7 o'clock last night? So even as metals were selling off, it wasn't really like a sort of gold story here to get this sell off. Like we had this sort of nice little flag set up. So we had the negative divergence, we're pushing out, we got the breakout, we got a little flag inside the flag thing. I think you can see maybe on a lower time frame it holds a bit better. And dribbled up, look, body fill on that one, and that was it. no continuation. And this is what I'll talk about sort of with these sort of three leg structures that, down here, resistance, back, support. Tackle the high, we break through. Leg three becomes leg one. Leg one comes back, find support, equal with that, previous resistance. This is the third leg here. This is the one that's going to give us our lower high, higher high, or double top. And in this case, you can see double top. Emphasis comes back onto these lows down here. We come back, we test that, little bounce, second effort, comes through, bang. And now we're starting to look downward. This move comes down, so on and so on. And again, we're sort of seeing that sort of structure play out to the downside now. So, look, the dollar is in a very crucial area. Major high time frame breakout points. So it's going to be tough getting up through here. Look, we had ECB yesterday. I think it was last night though, actually. So it was a little bit earlier than this kind of move. If this sell-off was coming from 7 o'clock, um, I'd have to sort of say, actually, to be honest, I wasn't on the screens enough to know what sort of drove the dollar sort of sell down. I do know sort of oil was seeming to have a sort of tough time sort of sticking up around above 100. What's it be? Oil's back down. Look at oil. Jeez, that thing here. It is having a tough time holding above 100. Look at this. If we put the line here, where's 100 here? It is having a tough time holding above 100. They are just smashing it. This one got closer, not quite there, but above there, boom, smash down. Like, it is having a tough time. And the dollar is running very much in sync with oil at the moment. And oil just bang, slam back down. Where did it go to? 92. Geez, that is a headache if someone's trading oil at the moment. But this is particularly why I don't trade oil because, it does this kind of sort of stuff. And this is generally the time when you're like, I can't do this. Screw this. It's just too much, yada, yada. And then you'll see the move happen. You'll either be blown out financially or blown out, mentally, and then you'll see it happen. Anyway, yeah, so I don't actually sort of know. Maybe someone else can sort of fill me in as to sort of what actually sort of caused this sell-off on the dollar, because it's not just a structural sort of thing. I mean, where it happened to come from, okay, yeah, you can see this sort of structure play out, but something of this kind of move, particularly while everything is so bullish, 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 you know what I mean? It's a bit of a odd, but it's a very heavy sell-off. Anyway, question is this done? Is that it? Is that it for the dollar? Have we had the whole sort of grand, try to make it out, bang, and you failed? Well, I don't know. I think certainly if you get back down underneath 98, is there a wick down here? I can't see it. Too many pictures here. If you get back down under 98.50, then yeah, you could probably say, hey, look, the dollar's in trouble. And certainly this is an ugly looking candle. You can see lower high kind of thing coming out here. Get rid of that because it didn't get there. As you can see, lower high, took out the bottom here. Big sort of, kind of, I guess you could say, engulfing candle there. I think today will be very important. We did get a little bit of a bounce off the lows into close, but this is on a daily, and that RSI is not looking particularly healthy. So any sort of move up and take out the bottom here, I think could see a little bit more downside here. This would also come in line, most likely, with that little bit of a bounce in metals. And that's what I'm sort of saying, like that, even though they both sold down very hard yesterday, you could see sort of like really where it sort of started to, where was it actually? So it wasn't actually anything. No, scrap what I just said then, because I'm trying to sort of match up. What time did we get the bounce on gold? We got the bounce on gold from about 12 o'clock where we hit the lows. So about this point here. So gold hit its lows here. And you can see that sort of like, it was obviously, okay, let me just get all this stuff, clear this up a little bit. So I'm trying to piece this together. This is the fun part about analysis and that. You're trying to sort of work out what happened in conjunction with stuff. But, so, there's through here. At this point here, we had sell down here. We had gold and dollar selling down. This was the question mark area because, as you can see, dollar here was still in just a pullback mode and that. Yes, it failed with this breakout thing, but you can see the market trying to hold it, hold it, hold it. And when the market said, hey, hold on, wait, you know what? We're not going to hold it anymore. They dumped it down another leg. And that's when we started to see the flows come back into from here actually. Sorry, from this question, from this point here, we start to see the flows come back into the metals. So should we see a little bit more of a sort of downside move here? I wouldn't be surprised if we see that sort of feeds that little bit of a bounce in the metals. But as to whether this is actually done, I don't think so. I don't think that's it. I don't think it's just, okay, boom, boom, and we failed, and that's it, game over for the dollar. Anything's possible. But what I'd kind of be looking for is maybe a little, like this is a pretty ugly sort of sell down. We broke that sort of support here. Maybe you get a bounce up here and then downside. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is a little bounce and then we sort of come back down, test around this sort of 98.70 level, which would give that sort of bounce in the metals. And then we start to sort of see another effort from these support areas down here. This one here. This level here, and then this level here. So if we do see a bit more sort of like this is a pretty ugly sell down. Yeah, it got a little bit of a bounce here, but certainly didn't really do much, did it, in terms of the bounce? It's a bit hard to tell because the dollar closes for an hour, but you can see it's not even past the 23% as of yet. Even if it gets back up to retest the underside, which is this level through here, that's at 38%. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be shell shocked a little bit. And potentially get up to here, come down here, and then move up through there. That's the structure that I'd sort of like to sort of see with it, which would go in line, as I said, with probably a little bit of a bounce in the metals, before then metals having another shot at the lows, with the dollar potentially having another move up over here. And this would kind of be your make or break. If the dollar comes, if this plays out and the dollar comes down here and then finds what it needs to have one more rally here, this will be your make or break, in my opinion. One attempt, two attempts, and then if a third attempt comes in here, we can put a little sort of line through here as well. If it's unable to break that and it rejects from here like that, then I think that'll be it for the dollar. In terms of sort of this effort to break out, and then we could start to look back down to these levels. We've still got a gap over here, don't we? We could start to sort of go, okay, now the dollar's not quite doing it, come back down a little bit lower, go to 97s, that kind of stuff with it all. But I still think there's probably, I just don't think that's going to be it for the dollar. Put it like that. I think that sort of maybe a little bit of shell shock, fluff around after this sell off, but at least one more effort up to the top side over here. But that'll be the sort of make or break in terms of it all. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Potentially a little bit of sort of nothingness, a little bit sort of like, call it the market digesting the move from overnight. And then we sort of see how things happen. All right, and ticking on, we got Aussie. Aussie was a very sort of frustrating. Well, short Aussie here. And it's funny, as I said, I was saying to a mate, so like I got off Aussie early. Sorry, got off metals a little bit early. And I'm like, you're not going to get me with Aussie. I'm going to hold this one. And of course, bang, look at the reversal here. This thing absolutely ripped off that dollar weakness. And this is a good example of sort of, even though Aussie's not part of DXY, yada, 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 it's not immune to USD flows. And this is how you use the DXY, the dollar. It's a barometer for market sort of sentiment towards the dollar across the market and shit. And then, of course, with Aussie particularly, then you need to sort of, build it into your model as to sort of, basically, is it going to be a multiplier or is it going to retard the move? Obviously, sort of with Aussie yesterday, we had job numbers out again. Or was it yesterday or the day before? I think it was the day before actually now, so I lose track of their days. But it was a bit of a mixed bag with the jobs. No, I think it was yesterday actually. Yeah, it was a bit of a mixed bag with the jobs data and that. And so we had strong job growth, well, slightly stronger than expected, but they always expect 20K. Stronger job growth, but unemployment went to 4.3% above previous and also expected 4.1%. So it's a bit of a mixed bag with the two there. And I think the unemployment rate going up higher is probably a little bit more significant in my eyes, only just for the fact that, okay, yeah, you beat estimates, but the estimate is 20,000 every month. So it's not really like, I mean, you know what I mean. You take the estimate with the job growth and jobs added with a little bit of grain of salt because they obviously just go, it's 22,000, 24,000 this month. It's always the same. So the fact that you get it blatantly wrong well, there's no shock with that. Anyway, whatever. The point is that the unemployment rate went to 4.3%. I think this is something that the RBA needs to factor in because 4.3, 4.4% is where they start to go, oh, okay, hold on, wait, the jobs are actually being affected. It's offset a little bit because of that sort of higher, 40,000 jobs added. But the point is that while they want to sort of have this incredibly hawkish take on things to fight inflation, it was easier when the jobs were strong and unemployment was low because they don't stand in the way. Because remember, they've got the two mandates and they need to balance them. And when one of them prior to say started this week, one of them was the jobs were strong, unemployment was weak, unemployment was low, but inflation was high. So inflation high requires them to hike, but because the economy is strong, GDP is strong, unemployment's figures are nice, are in a good place, there's nothing standing in the way. So it makes an easy decision. Okay, so they hike. And then, of course, on top of that, you've got Middle East situation. But, that aside, the Middle East situation aside, if we just talk about the local data, this is, how the RBA would be approaching it. But now you've got unemployment percentage creeping up. So you still have the inflation, so you still need to sort of have a bit of a hawkish sort of tilt on the inflation front, but you can't go as incredibly hard because it's actually affecting and it's showing up in the data that it's affecting the unemployment rate. See, if you keep hiking, there's less money going around. That's fine. There's less people employing. Well, that's what drives up the unemployment rate. People just don't have the money to employ all these people. And then that is the way, that's the, then sort of like less people have jobs, less people have money to spend. It, in theory, slows down inflation. That's how it sort of plays out in, in the RBA's eyes. So when the job figures were good, it was an easy call. But now on top of that, you've got uncertainty with Middle East. You've got unemployment numbers creeping up, and also you've got petrol prices going through the roof. And it's funny because you look at these things where they sort of go, the interest rates have gone up 0.25%. Now on a $700,000 loan, that's $100 a month. Like I get it. It's sort of like on top of, but it's $100 more a month. Okay, fine. It's a bit. Petrol prices have just gone. I filled up the other day. It was 144 bucks. I've got a big tank, but still, and it was pretty empty. And I get the premium. But the point is still, it's very expensive compared to what it was a little while ago. So where they're sort of saying, hey, look, it's $100 more per month for an interest rate increase. Well, if you fill up your tank 4 times a month and once a week, and you're paying $25 more per week, well, there's another $100. So the petrol prices are almost sort of like another interest rate rise in themselves. So that actually then sort of, will, in theory, reduce people's available cash to spend. So, there's a lot of things sort of factoring in there at the moment, but, Aussie at the moment obviously sort of bounced back as dollar sold off. I don't think that, it's got such a clear cut, hey, we're super hawkish and we're the best game in town to be going through higher. And that, amongst all that sort of, waffle for 20 minutes that I just did then, is the idea that I don't think that this is a real move that is going to take it out to the top here. I think this is a flare up. I think this is off the dollar weakness. I think that the fundamentals and that sort of mean that the RBA need to have a little bit more of a sort of balanced approach, which, being super hawkish is what's held it up over here. Now that they can't be so super hawkish, well, I think that sort of means that, hold on, wait, let's take the air out of the tires a little bit. And I think you have more downside here. So despite this thing sort of moving up to the top side over here, I think that sort of like, should we see a rally in the dollar? I don't think Aussie's still going to be able to withstand it. And I think Aussie's still going to break to the downside here. So 55 minutes later, that's the point that I'm getting to. So we did bounce up here. We are obviously rejecting and holding at this sort of 71 cents, just a touch above there. Got rejected down pretty quickly here. Should this thing roll over here? I mean, this is on the 1 hour. It does look like it may want to sort of push back a little bit. 4 hour actually looks pretty good, to be honest, but you probably would want to see this thing moving up a little bit higher. This is actually a retest of this breakdown level, actually, now that I look at this. This is where it sort of came out. So this one here. This is where you got that body fill, which I always talk about, and also this is the breakdown level of this rising support here. Retest, bang, okay, through here. Look, this will be interesting. If you can get back above sort of 71.20, you got justifiable reasons to move up towards that sort of 71.50 to 71.80. It's just a question of, was this it, just a little sort of fly up here, or are we going to come back down here? I'm probably in the camp that we are at least going to be sort of coming back down over here. Though, you know, because the move was quite decent, I would like to sort of see what happens around this zone here. I don't know why it's on gap, but let's pull this little zone here. Actually, no, make it a purple zone. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a little bit of a pushback down here around that sort of 70.50, and this is the area that I'll be interested to sort of see what happens with it. That's kind of like a little bit of a resistance zone over here. Do we sort of get the pushback here and then find it sort of bounces in this little range up over here? Or do we sort of break through this and then come back down to the bottom side over there? But I think, yeah, again, sort of same with these moves. I think these moves are kind of a little bit played out. I think this moved too fast for Aussie. And I wouldn't be surprised if this actually comes back down a little bit lower. Cool. And finally, just to tick on with Aussie yen. So still, we are holding that this channel. Very, very much here. Just how many times I've drawn this thing here. Bang. It will come eventually, but it may be up here if we sort of hold this bounce. But again, we saw a strong sell-off on Aussie here. And this is just unpacking what I said the other day. This is why you got to be careful with these V shapes. Because I said, look, I said there was no trade for me in this area here because I was just like, I don't know, it's grinding and it could just keep on grinding. But it did start obviously to sort of V out here. It broke down underneath this. This 112.40 was the key. And obviously bang, what did I say yesterday? I think 114 was the target. And obviously came back down, hit those lows, and it's finding support on Q. Now, this is the question. Is this it this time? You know what I mean? We've seen the bounces, you know, overshoots of these things previously. This is a channel it's been respecting for quite some time now. And it's still respecting it on Q here. Put an alert under here, because actually, look, we've already got that here. So let's put this just under here, and that's going to be major break. Look, pretty much that's it. If you get the breakdown underneath here, I would say then we've finally got this little trade happening. So faster move down to sort of mid 109s, potentially for a bounce back up to these 118s, these kind of things, underside of this channel, and then sort of look for a move. But I think once you break through here, sort of fluffing around while it finds itself and finds its position, but I do think that that is then going to sort of settle to the downside. As to sort of where that comes, well, this is your main trend in conjunction with 40-year highs or thereabouts, that 107, 108 area. I think that's kind of the target there. So watching very closely now for a continued break down underneath here. As I said, I think the same with the Aussie dollar, Aussie yen. I think is going to be affected by not as strong a RBA. I mean, yeah, you could look at it and say, look, the BOJ aren't doing anything, of course, but I do think that this is, got some downside to come. Though I've said this a few times, I've been caught off guard, so I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. All right, that's it for a minute.